Donald Trump, the 45th President of the United States, is known for his extreme usage of language. Just looking up Donald Trump in language in Google search will give you 386 million hits. While he is known for his unorthodox usage of language in politics, as he uses phrases such as crooked Hillary to describe his Democratic presidential opponent Hillary Clinton, Lion Ted Cruz as a nickname for his Republican primary opponent Ted Cruz, and Rocket Man to describe the dictator of North Korea, he has shown a remarkable ability to adapt to different audiences and alter his speech depending on the audience and the effect he is trying to convey. In this further oral activity, we will be looking at two different Trump speeches in two radically different locations. First, we will be looking at his first public address to Congress in the House of Representatives chamber in the Capitol during his second month of presidency. To give some context, this speech is very similar to the traditional State of the Union address presidents give each year in office, but is not actually a State of the Union address because it is a traditional speech given after only a couple of months in office. Still, the goals and purpose of the speech are the same as the State of the Union address, which is to highlight the political agenda for the next 4 years, along with touching upon progress already made in the first few months. This speech is addressed to Congress, but just like State of the Union speeches, this speech is widely televised and publicized, reaching all kinds of Americans as 47.7 million people tuned in to watch the 2017 speech.
His other political address that we will be examining was at a rally at an arena in Phoenix, Arizona, which ended up being more of a political rant than a formal speech. This speech was made approximately to 10,000 Trump supporters who purchased tickets to the event with the purpose of garnering support for his immigration agenda, which largely impacts the border state of Arizona, as Trump already began his re-election campaign there, although the speech eventually touched upon a lot of subjects. In the two different speeches, Trump addresses many of the same topics, but with a different word choice, varying sentence lengths, and varying degrees of repetition. We will look at how audience and strategy affect his language, as Trump was speaking to two radically different groups of people in both of his speeches, and his purpose in talking to both groups differed as well. The four different subjects Trump touched upon in both speeches that we will be examining are his opinions on jobs, Democrats, education, and the border wall.
A topic Donald Trump touches upon frequently is jobs. At both his rally and at his congressional address, Trump mentioned American jobs and his desire to create and improve working conditions for Americans. However, the way he talked about this issue was different in each of his speeches. Here are excerpts from his congressional speech and then his rally in Arizona.
I believe that real and positive immigration reform is possible as long as we focus on the following goals: to improve jobs and wages for Americans, to strengthen our nation's security, and to restore respect for our laws. And I said, well, I think jobs can have a very big and positive impact. I think if we continue to create jobs like I've done, over 1 million since I've been in office, way over 1 million. I think if we continue to create jobs at levels that I'm creating jobs, I think that's going to have a tremendously positive impact on race relations. I do.
With these two clips, it is clear to see that there are some linguistic differences between the two speeches. First of all, looking at sentence structure, Trump speaks in much longer, more fluid sentences in the congressional speech. In fact, that first excerpt was one complete sentence. However, in the second speech, Trump's sentences are a lot shorter, with 3 sentences in that excerpt being 4 words or less. Additionally, the repetition runs rampant in the second speech, with him repeating phrases such as 1 million and I do, versus 0 repetition in his first speech. Content-wise, while both speeches speak about jobs, Trump is more boastful in the second excerpt than in the first, as he talks about his success at creating jobs in his Phoenix rally, while the congressional speech talks about the positive impact more jobs and higher wages have on American society as a whole. So why does Trump approach the same topic so differently in the two speeches? First of all, Trump's address to Congress is being made to people from all across the political spectrum. Thus, that is why content-wise, he spoke with a more unifying tone as the speech was reaching a broader audience. However, Trump's content was more braggadocious in the rally, as he was trying to garner support for his controversial immigration agenda while starting his campaign for 2020. As for why the structure differed, that most likely has to do with the formality of the speeches themselves. The congressional chamber is where the most eloquent politicians throughout American history have stood to address Congress and the nation, and thus the sentences spoken there should be more eloquent and fluid themselves. However, in the rally, where Trump is attempting to connect with his supporters, he uses more everyday talk, which often includes repetition and shorter sentences.
Another topic Donald Trump brings up in his speeches is his opinions on the Democratic Party. He talks very differently about them in the two different speeches, addressing Democrats in a much more eloquent way in his congressional address compared to his rally in Phoenix. These are some excerpts regarding the Democratic Party from Trump's speeches.
On this and so many other things, Democrats and Republicans should get together and unite for the good of our country and for the good of the American people. So the Democrats have no ideas, no policy, no vision for the country, other than total socialism, and maybe, frankly, a step beyond socialism from what I'm seeing.
These two clips clearly illustrate the different ways Trump speaks and the extent of comfort to which he feels addressing each different audience in the two speeches. In the first excerpt, Trump speaks with a sense of unity and hope, trying to relay the idea that it is in America's best interest to have both Democrats and Republicans working together to achieve a greater good for the country. However, he completely goes against this idea in the second excerpt at the Arizona rally. In this quote, he essentially ruins anything positive he previously said about the Democratic Party by saying that their vision for the country is becoming a step beyond socialism, showing that Trump strongly disagrees with having a socialist society in America. Additionally, Trump speaks with a generally more professional tone in his address to Congress compared to his rally. In the excerpt from the rally, he says, "No ideas, no policy, no vision for the country," which is an extremely negative statement about America, and he makes it seem as if the Democrats have absolutely no idea what they're doing through the repetition of the word no. Since no is such a definitive word, he provides no room for interpretation about what he is trying to say about the Democrats. He wants his supporters at the rally to know that he thinks poorly of their political party. However, the more polished tone that he uses for his congressional address shows that during his speech, Trump was pushing his own thoughts and emotions regarding the Democratic Party aside in order to appeal to Congress as a whole. Since there were many Democrats present at the speech of his, he did not want to lose their support by blatantly saying negative things about them, so instead of turning Democrats away by insulting them, he invites the Democratic Party to join the Republicans in the effort to unify America.
The third topic we will be examining is how Donald Trump approaches the topic of education in the two speeches. Here are clips from the two speeches.
I am calling upon members of both parties to pass an education bill that funds school choice for disadvantaged youth, including millions of African American and Latino children. These families should be free to choose the public, private, charter, magnet, religious, or home school that is right for them. They're elite. I went to better schools than they did. I was a better student than they were. I live in a bigger, more beautiful apartment, and I live in the White House, too, which is really great.
Here again, it is clear that the structure and content of the two speeches are quite different. Structure and content-wise, in the congressional address, just like in the other congressional excerpts, the sentence structure includes longer descriptive sentences that uses more advanced adjectives to describe the state of the noun, such as disadvantaged. Advanced in this scenario is relative compared to the adjectives used at the rally, which in this excerpt are bigger, better, great, and more beautiful. These adjectives mainly just describe size and degree of greatness, and not any other things. Additionally, yet again, there is repetition in the rally excerpt that is not found in a congressional address, as Trump starts each sentence with, "I went, I was, I live," and just sentences following the "I did this" template. The structure and content of this excerpt are affected by audience and purpose, because in the congressional address, as Trump reaches a wider American audience that includes all different ethnicities, he decides to mention disadvantaged minorities, while in the rally he established a me versus the elite attitude, as his audience did not include a political elite that he spoke to in the congressional address.
The last main topic that appears in both of Trump's speeches is the issue of the border wall that he wants to build in America. Here are two excerpts from each speech regarding this topic.
We must restore integrity and the rule of law at our borders. For that reason, we will soon begin the construction of a great, great wall along our southern border. But I said to them, how are we doing and how important are the walls? And they said, Mr. President, you have no idea It is desperately needed. We're going to have our wall. We're going to get our wall.
Like the previous examples, these two clips are very different in terms of structure and content. In the congressional address, Trump presents his ideas of building the wall along the southern border of America in a professional way that not everyone in the audience may have agreed with, but it earned him a large amount of applause because of the way he delivered this idea. In the Arizona rally, he did not receive this respectful response from his audience because of the way he used language. He spoke in a way that would best be identified as immature by repeating, "We're going to have our wall, we're going to get our wall," which is analogous to a child who isn't getting what they want. This statement earned him the blind encouragement of his supporters, but not the respectful applause of the entirety of Congress, because most of his supporters at the rally thought that he was great no matter what, but if he had spoken like this in front of government officials, he would have been ridiculed. The audience and purpose of these excerpts affect the structure and content of Trump's speeches by Trump refining and polishing his speech to appeal to a broader, more mature audience regarding the congressional address, and him being able to freely rant and repeat himself in front of a smaller audience of just his supporters.
Donald Trump's use of language is incredibly extreme, and his radical way of changing his speech provides a lot of room for in-depth analysis of how his structure and content of his speech changed depending on his audience and/or his purpose. These drastic speech changes were best represented in his first public address to Congress that took place shortly after his 2016 inauguration and was broadcasted nationwide, and his political rally in Phoenix, Arizona that was targeted towards 10,000 of Trump's supporters. Trump brought up many of the same issues that America is facing in these two different speeches, but it was the way that he addressed the issues and the tone in which he addressed his audience that made these two speeches so exceedingly opposite from each other. His opinions on jobs, Democrats' education, and the border wall were presented in a much more professional and embellished way in his congressional address compared to his Arizona rally. During his address to Congress, he presented his opinions in an eloquent manner, not coming across as too forcefully negative or biased, and spoke with a unifying tone.
However, in his speech in Arizona, he had essentially no filter, which qualified this address as more of a rant than an organized speech. He used an exorbitant amount of repetition in this speech and often spoke in sentence fragments that were not grammatically correct, instead of full sentences that flowed nicely, spending a lot of time focusing on his personal accomplishments and antagonizing his political opponents due to him speaking to a different audience, and thus having a more personal, everyday approach to speech. So to conclude, through this FOA, it is evident that language is dynamic and not only changes from person to person, but can change for just one person, in this case, President Donald Trump, depending on the audience and purpose one has in speaking. Thank you.